Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is your guide Olena from Ukraine, and in this video I will spread the word of the American professor of history Timothy Snyder. Basically, I will retell you his address to the Kiev Security Forum given in May. In the description of this video you will find the link to his original speech. So 10 reasons by Timothy Snyder why the victory of Ukraine is important, not just for me, not just for Ukraine, but for the larger world and for you. So the first and the most fundamental is that the victory of Ukraine is the only way how to achieve peace. And peace is basically what you need, what I need, what all of us need, right? The Russian victory would only lead to further aggression and more atrocities on the Ukrainian land. But Ukrainian victory, its significant success on the battlefield, will push Russia to real negotiations and establish the real peace in Ukraine. The second reason given by Timothy Snyder is that the victory of Ukraine is important not only for Ukraine, but for the security of the whole region. It is not only the only way how the Ukrainian population can be protected, but it is also very important for people of Baltic states, Moldova, Georgia and others, that the Russian aggression against its neighbor does not succeed. The third is that the victory of Ukraine is very important for the citizens of Ukraine, because this is the only way how the local population can be protected. You see that the Ukrainian people under Russian occupation are subjects to deportation and other forms of atrocities. Ukrainian people not under Russian occupation are vulnerable to bombings and shots. The only way how to secure 40 million of population is for the war to cease. And the only way for the war to cease is by the Ukrainian victory. The reason number 4 by Timothy Snyder has to do with the defense of democracy. One of the reasons why this war has started is that Ukraine is a democratic state. Democracy has to protect itself. This is why Ukraine has to protect itself and win. This is why number 5, Ukrainian victory is important for democracies as such. Because if Russia wins this war, this would be the victory for all forces who oppose democracy and would become the green light to all regimes who plan to use violence to overthrow democracies. But if Ukraine wins, this will be the victory for all of us who believe in democracy, who believe in law, who want to elect our leaders and to hold our leaders accountable. You don't want to have a copy of Putin in your country, right? And the reason number 6 by Timothy Snyder is that the victory of Ukraine is the victory of a state that has been traditionally seen as peripheral and colonial against a power that was seeing itself as central and imperial. Timothy Snyder reminds us that, as we know from 19th and 20th century, imperial wars belong to a certain phase of development. Imperial wars will continue as long as imperial powers believe that they can win. Every European state and many others, at some point they reached the point when they realized that imperial wars will exhaust them, which is a good sign for development of humankind. So, because this is an imperial war in which Russia claims that Ukrainian people do not exist, Ukrainian state does not exist, the victory of Ukraine is important to defend the basic principle that nations are equal and deserve respect. And here comes the reason number 7. The victory of Ukraine is important for the recollection of the Second World War. Mr. Putin, by its aggression, is telling us that the lesson of the Second World War is that we need more wars. That the defeat of fascism is that we need more fascism. That the lesson of the defeat of imperialism is that we need more imperialism. And Putin says that the word Nazi means whatever he wants it to mean and can be deployed as hate speech against whoever happens to be an enemy of his choice. This is Putin's reading of the Second World War, and this is not the reading that should prevail. We have to reinforce the values that we have preserved by the Second World War: toleration of difference, the rule of law, pluralism, and cooperation between democracies. The reason number 8, and here I again absolutely agree with Timothy Snyder, that the victory of Ukraine is important for Russia itself. Even though, honestly, I hate Russia right now because it started a terrible war against my country and just wants to kill my people and eliminate my state, destroy my country, I agree with Timothy Snyder that it's important for the security of Europe and the whole world what kind of Russia we will be living alongside for the decades to come. It is very important for Russia to lose this war, for Russia to become a normal state where interests of Russian people are protected, where interests of Russian people are observed by Russian leaders. It is important for Russia to stop trying to gather the lands, but to think instead about the interests of Russian people and Russian future. So the defeat of Russia on the battlefield is a step towards normal Russia, and this will make the world much safer for all of us. Now, the reason number 9 is that Ukraine has to win this war because Ukraine is one of the major sources of food for the world. Well, in the history of the 20th century, Ukraine was already observed as an object of colonization because of its very fertile soil from all sides, basically. In the present war, Russia illegally expropriates Ukrainian agricultural products. Timothy Snyder is saying politely, but I would say Russia is just stealing our grain and everything else, and blockades the rest of the world from the export of Ukrainian agricultural products. Russia is using food like the weapon. Should this war continue this way, people of Africa and the Middle East and elsewhere will be threatened by the anticipated and then the real shortage of food, which will have the consequence not only in hunger and death, but also of political instability along the way. Ukrainian victory will reopen the world's trade and prevent all of this. And the reason number 10 that Timothy Snyder is given, the reason number 10, which is the last but not the least, is that the Ukrainian victory will point Ukraine and the rest of the world towards the future. Russian propaganda is all about the past, about seeking some point in the history where we were right and everybody else was wrong. But this is not what we need. We need the future. And here Timothy Snyder is saying that it is very important that European country and the rest of the world offer Ukraine a future in the form of membership in the European Union and in the form of generous aid, which allows Ukrainians to rebuild. But the process goes two ways. If you are open-minded and generous in the way you look at Ukraine, you will see that Ukrainians are also offering the future for you. Had Ukrainians not fought, had Ukrainians capitulated, your future, the future of democracy, would look very bleak. Because Ukrainians did resist, because Ukrainians are fighting, they've bought other democracies a certain amount of time, and this time should be used to think about the future. Not only the future of Ukraine that will join other democracies in different forms of cooperation, but a future in a broader sense, where a Ukrainian victory demonstrates that individual action matters, that people can take responsibility, that the range of possibility is broader than we think. So this was retelling of the speech of American professor of history Timothy Snyder, his address to the Kiev Security Forum. The link to his original speech is in the description of this video, and he is speaking much better than me, but I just agree with every single word that he is saying. So I have decided to spread the word to you. And Timothy Snyder has given lots of other interviews in which he explains the history of Ukraine and why this war is happening and how this war should and must end in the end.